Okay, that should be up and running. There's always a bit of a delay as it goes over to the new studio. There it is. Good morning. It's another beautiful day here in New Zealand. Pop out the chat. Grab my cheese and my coffee. Hey, Moonring. Art by Bart. Welcome. Lysander. Moondog. Pale Rider. How's it going? Hey, Dennis. You made it. Adrianeth. Nice to see you. Oh, wow. You're here right from the very beginning. Mark R. Ralph. Welcome. Cormac, welcome back. Ryan, nice to see you. Hey, Robert. Seraph the Fallen. Hey, Kick-Ass Duke. Good morning. Time for some more death cheese. This one's not looking so deadly, actually. Keith, Tyler. Amigo Roberto. Winnie Hash Browns, hello. Going good now? Good. Yeah. Go and make yourself a drink. I've got myself my my casual coffee beverage. Graveyard cheese. Yeah, it does look kind of grey. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Mr. L, nice to see you. Hey, Sky. This cheese is particularly moist. I'm good. Oh, yes, Dennis. I don't know if you remember, but I ran that session 0 you asked about. Went great. Appreciate your help. No problem. I'm happy it went well for you. No, dragons don't lactate. Dragons don't even have... they have a cloaca. So, this is an interesting question that gets fielded all the time. It's like, well, if you have half dragons, like half dragons or dragonborn, like how did the dragonborn come about, and etc. But half dragons in particular, it's like they're not necessarily sterile. This coffee is delicious. But no, dragons are not mammals, so they don't have mammary glands. The reason why dragonborn have mammary glands is because they were originally derived from humanoids. They were transformed by Bahamut. Whereas half dragons, on the other hand, no, they're not in any way humanoid. They're dragonborn. They're half dragon. The draconic. So the mammal side of it gets completely overridden, really. Oh, it's Sunday over there. So, when dragons procreate with humans, forget about the biological aspect of it, because you're essentially asking, can a human have a baby with a Komodo dragon, with a monitor lizard, with a snake, right? No, clearly not. You know, they're a completely different form of life. What's actually happening is the elemental nature of the dragon. So the energistic side of them, the bit that channels massive amounts of energy in the form of a breath weapon and allows them to retain their strength and grow stronger as they age. That is what is infecting a human, you could say. When the dragon, and the only way the dragons can do this is either by exposing the human to that level of radiation, to cause their offspring to germinate and do that thing, or they've polymorphed and done things the usual way in polymorphed form, and that's actually what's happened. There's no DNA that's carried through the bloodline of sorcerers and stuff. This is why the draconic energy that's in the bloodline of a draconic sorceress line can skip a few generations, just sort of pop up randomly, and it can manifest really hard in certain individuals and not at all in others. And why they can develop these draconic features as they grow in power, for instance, and use that draconic energy because it's transforming them into a dragon. It's not DNA. Their DNA is completely normal. So there you go. Horses made of Richards. Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to talk about at the moment is I'm reading currently this. This is the Spawning Pool of Elder Things. I had this professionally printed. Sorry, this is part 1 of Spawning Pool of the Elder Things. This is part 2 of the Spawning Pool. So this is the actual total of Spawning Pool of the Elder Things. It is... how would I describe this? Essentially, it's a monster generation system that I'm reading about, and it's germinating with ideas that I have of my own. But it's also a Cthulhu-esque delve into monster theory and like the whole idea of the Lovecraftian universe. So when you're reading it, you literally feel like you're a researcher from a H.P. Lovecraft story who's delving into a manuscript that they should not be reading. Yeah, I'm already starting to see elder things. One cannot milk a dragon wolf stag. We've talked about this. Do you think Ixatzarchitl should be a fiend like gnolls? Yeah, they could be. They have that whole vampire society thing running them. Oh, cheese elemental sheet. Nice. I'll have to check that out. This is it, Paltina. The dragons can have relations with any species because it's not genetic. It's got nothing to do with the bits that species has. So you can have a half dragon, half golem, for instance. Why not? It's not a biological process. How to create horrors beyond the ken of men. Yeah, that's exactly what this is all about. So, yeah, what I'm looking at is a massive project where essentially I combine some work that's been sitting dusty on my shelf for a long time with this sort of thing to create a monster generation system for 5th edition, which is in the line of a more modern take on Spelljammer, a more horrific cosmos, you could say, that gets rid of a lot of the wacky zaniness of Spelljammer that I think turns off a lot of people from it. I think Spelljammer, we may see Spelljammer come back to D&D, but it'll be a darker, grittier, planescapier version of Spelljammer, I think. I don't know if it's going to be the nostalgia fest that everybody thinks it's going to be. What about kobolds in Dragonborn? Yeah, that's a good question. See, Dragonborn they're draconic, clearly. So therefore they're worthy of respect, and kobolds would treat them with deference as members of their own species. So kobolds wouldn't act against Dragonborn just because they're player characters. They would look at them, and even lizard folk in a certain way, as being the right species, sort of thing. But if they were turned against them because they were serving a dragon, a full dragon, then the dragonness of the Dragonborn wouldn't really be much of a factor. Now, a Dragonborn that is using magic, that may possibly impress them enough to actually not want to fight them, because they would see them as essentially blessed. Well, steel dragons are essentially the song dragon, right? Or are they completely different? Hey, thanks, Wolfstag. That reminds me, this is a monetized stream, everybody. So thank you very much for your donations. I will answer any question that has a super chat attached to it. Currently on my fifth year long campaign, thanks to your videos, my dude. Do you have a personal favorite class? My personal favorite class is the cleric. And I'd have to say that I've played clerics more than anything because of the diversity that you can put into that class. It's different every single time you play it, really, because it's got so many subtle nuances to it. You're deeply involved in your own personal culture, and also the hierarchy of your church, the tenets of your faith, and your moral conundrums as you go through. And also you get to know the player characters because they all want to buddy up with the cleric, essentially, because you give them heals and boost them during combat and stuff. So there's also a tactical aspect to the combat with a cleric on board where they can bless and curse the enemies. So they can swing combat quite a different direction if they forego doing directed damage themselves and just instead support the party. It can be quite awesome. So yeah, I'm playing a cleric gnome at the moment in a bi-weekly game. He's my pseudo-famous deep gnome cleric called Schnicklegrick. So when kobolds worship a dragon, the faithful have their corpses swallowed by the dragon, the body passing to the elemental plane and possibly join the dragon essence reborn as a full dragon. Interesting. That could work. There's a half red dragon, half remoras, known as the red worm. Yeah. Terrifying things like that. Like, that's one of the things about the spawning pool of the Elder Things is it discusses whether, when you're creating a monster, whether it's a race of monsters, a breed of monsters, because we quite often assume in making monsters in D&D that it's a race, it's a whole group of monsters. But it's just as likely if you go with the Greek mythology, where Pegasus was just Pegasus. There was only Pegasus. There was only one Medusa sort of thing. Well, she had some sisters, but there was only one sort of Gorgon in Greek mythology. There was only one Kraken sort of thing. That the monster that you create could be a one-off. It could be unique. I have checked. I haven't personally used the D&D spellbook cards. It's just never come up in Play Kick-Ass Duke. Thank you for the donation, by the way. I quite like the idea of them, though, and I'm often tempted by them. But I just it would be impractical, because I play most of my games online at the moment because I live out in the country. Mind Flayer False Hydra, exactly. Nice. The racial stats for Dragonborn don't seem like much of an upgrade. Well, it was a matter of faith. So the clerics of Bahamut became the paladins of Bahamut, and they were given these draconic traits by choice. But later on, they changed the Dragonborn to an actual legitimate race. Need a statted out Omnath. Ag Silver Radio, good morning, Gnome Artificer, and all the others who have just joined us. Hey, Demon Inquisition. So this week, I'm going to be covering the Black Dragon, which is one of the reasons why we're talking about dragons at the moment. So I'm thinking all things dragon and also all things monsters. So the output of videos at the moment is a little bit less than normal because I'm doing some writing in the background as well. And also I'll be doing another podcast type thing. The first one went pretty well, I thought. those of you who are Subscribe Star members or Patreon members or YouTube members will have got to see that that little 45-minute blurb where I just talk off script about stuff. Wonder if we'll ever get a campaign book for Magic the Gathering Zendikar. I hope so. I'm looking for Phyrexia. Are there limits to biological mixing? Half human, half elf for sure. Half elf gnome. Well, no, I don't think so. I mean, it's all bets are off really when it comes to magic, right? Hey, thanks, Adrianeth. Okay, OG, I've got one for you. Working on a warlock artificer, Pact of the Old Ones. I want her to have a curse to her pact. What do you think of her having to eat a brain once a month of a high intelligence like an Elhoon? I think that's horrifying. I think that's awesome. How about also she has to replace her body parts to become less and less human, and more like a weird sort of elder cyborg. If she can't get hold of a brain, she has to lop off a finger and replace it with a bit of artifice. So she becomes more and more Gollum-like, more and more like a Warforged as she progresses. She or he. Oh, it is a her. Yeah. That's a great concept, though. I like that. There was a character that my friend Ian was running called, who was a Revenant, who, oh no, he was a Warforged, but he was like a Warforged Revenant, so he had to keep replacing his body parts as they decayed, and he replaced them with the bits of, so he was essentially a self-repairing Frankenstein that stitched the tongue of an enemy into his mouth, and he could talk normally again. But as the game progressed, his speech degraded as his mouth decayed, and yeah, he had like a skin cloak and stuff. He was terrifying. Automatic bonuses on all intimidation. Hey Scorch, greetings and salutations. Elhoons use they them pronouns, maybe. Ever heard of the Wagadoo Chronicles? No, I have not. Did I have an evil laugh? Oh, my old Black Dragon. Yeah. Well, I mean, the Dragon videos are still kicking around, but I think it's time for an upgrade for the Dragon series. Oh, good. I'm glad we're on the same page, Adriana. Stanchgate, thank you. I'm about to run Savage Rifts game. I have failed old school Rifts games before. I had failed OG Rifts games before. Got any advice for running the Rifts Earth setting? Go off script pretty much immediately. I quite often just avoid Chi-Town and the Coalition forces and stuff in my game, and Tolkien and Laszlo and stuff. Like I created the Manistique Imperium as the setting for my adventures in Rifts. And usually it went off-world pretty quickly. So what I did was I took advantage of the Megaverse and I just combined it with Phase World. So they got involved with, like, Atlantis is really good in Rifts, and taking them to Rifts Atlantis as, like, they stow away on a Katani battleship or something like that, and they end up in a Splugorth market, and then they go off-world to Phase World, you know, and from there to the Three Galaxies or something like that, you know. So you can really go gonzo on Rifts and take them to one extraordinary thing after another, and just as long as they can survive it, sort of thing. But yeah, don't stay on Rifts Earth if you don't want to. You can leapfrog to other places as well. That's the whole point, really. Like dimensional shifting as you're walking through a landscape is like you get thrown into the Feywild pretty much, or with Shadowfell or something. It happens randomly on Rifts Earth. And of course involve a blade mage if you want to. Do I think that a Modron Warlock patron is possible? Yeah, well, I mean, I never say never, and I don't tell people how to run their game. And if you are going down that path, really all Modrons are working for Primus. Primus is the primary intelligence, which is the source of Modron power, you could say. All Modrons are aspects of Primus's will. So you're really a warlock of Primus himself, or itself. But that being said, there are rogue Modrons who are quite powerful. This isn't like the quadrones and stuff. This is the big pentadrones and things like that, who are actually pretty powerful in the hierarchy of that. But that being said, they'll be pretty hotly contested by the other Modrons who would want to hunt them down and correct that imbalance. I do have an evil laugh. Ah. I suppose so. I only use my powers for good. How would one seduce a black dragon? One would not seduce a black dragon. Rift South America is pretty good. Atlantis is one of the better settings, I think, for the game. Rifts England is okay if you get rid of the whole Knights of Camelot thing. I think Rifts Africa is probably one of their worst supplements, although there's bits that you can use from it. Rifts Australia is also not the best. It's okay. Triax and Northern Gun are probably pretty good. And I like the whole idea of like getting involved, like escaping from the coalition states and going over to Triax in Germany, for instance, is pretty good because there's a whole cultural difference. Hey, Lion Dove. Yeah, YouTube's weird. YouTube algorithms, eh? It perplexes me always. Like, I look at my stats for YouTube, and on every video that I put out, half of the viewers are subscribers and half of the viewers are non-subscribers. I'm like, if only all those people who were non-subscribers actually like subscribe to the channel, then my subscribers count would double instantly. But no, they don't. That's okay. They'll come around eventually, hopefully, maybe. Maybe they don't subscribe to anybody. Who am I to say? A smooth New Zealand accent. Oh. Emergency question. What's your emergency question, Dog Draws? Scorch, I think it's coming soon. They've got this suite of 3 supplements coming up, which I think are old school revival type stuff. Your bard accidentally seduced Asmodeus. No, Asmodeus seduced your bard. How do I fix this? You can't. Roll up a new character. Forget about it. What's my favourite dragon to DM? Oh, they all have their facets, don't they? I did actually, like, at the start of this video, I am talking about a particular instance, the last time I DM'd a black dragon in a campaign, and it was a freshly hatched wormling, and it took out basically the entire city that it hatched in within a matter of weeks. Splugorth are great bad guys, yeah. Also, vampire intelligences and the way they handle vampires in Rifts is fantastic. I don't think it's done better anywhere else. That's my idea of vampires. It's fantastic. Alien intelligences, and, you know, Northern Gun is really good. Why do lizard folk seem to get along with black dragons? Black dragons don't really get along with anybody. It's just a matter of time until they kill you. They're essentially like Al Capone in the last years of his life. You can imagine as the syphilis was eating away at his brain, he was a dangerous person to be around. So black dragons are like that by default. They're just crazy sadistic. So they get their minions, but their minions are victims. Whereas blue dragons use their minions and like having a cadre around them, kind of like Jabba the Hutt in his palace. The black dragons, it's a murder spree. So you work for a black dragon, you become as sadistic as a black dragon, and it's a competition amongst his minions to be as evil and conniving and sadistic as possible to curry favour with the black dragon, because the black dragon likes sadistic bullies and psychopaths being around them as well. But it's only a matter of time before it kills you. Mexico, yeah, Rift's Vampire Kingdoms is, I think, one of that was my favorite supplement for it, because it was just so well done. The idea of venturing into the Vampire Kingdoms is terrifying. Yeah, lizard folk do whatever is most convenient for survival, and of course, they're victimized. They're victims. It's not so much that they want to be infected with draconic essence and stuff and turn into those big hulking brutes. It's just that they're in close proximity to the lair of a black dragon, because they don't have the luxury of picking and choosing the terrain and stuff that they live in. So where the lizard folk live in swamps and stuff, that's where black dragons and green dragons and stuff go. So that's why they're influenced by black dragons and green dragons. They would be just as influenced by red dragons if they happen to live in mountains and volcanic regions. So you could ask, why are fire newts so influenced by red dragons, for instance? It's just they share the same territory. My black dragon voice. I'll work my way up to it. Could Tiamat and Bahamut breed in theory, putting aside the lifelong blood feud, or would the relations of their blood be a problem, or would... yeah, it's not a genetic thing. So when two gods breed, they just create offspring. And it's a matter of their followers and stuff. Oh, you're wearing the Vecna shirt. Nice. Possibly, yeah. I do hope that DMs have my videos timestamped and catalogued so they can get their players to refer to them. It's kind of the point. Well, that's the beauty of rifts. You don't have to get them to Mexico. They can literally step through a portal and be in Mexico, just walking down the street. Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to continue on with the podcast experience. The next one is going to be about non-monster stuff that happens in the encounters, because that's what somebody requested that I talk about, and I'm happy to talk about anything that people request that I talk about. So that'll be it. Dusk till dawn, yeah. Dusk till dawn and railguns. That's rifts for you. Scorch, I wouldn't say that I'm up to like I'm not up to the modern Warhammer 40k. I'm still learning Warhammer 40k. I got the general gist of it, and I can converse and understand what anybody is talking about with Warhammer 40k. But I wouldn't call myself an expert. Hey, welcome to Gold Dragon, Mark R. Nice to have you. What do I think of half lizard folk? Yeah, less inclined. Half dragons, sure, they're magical creatures, but lizard folk aren't magical creatures unless they're like they're a result of alchemical experimentation. Can a lizard person be a pet? Only of a very powerful creature, like, humans can be pets too. That's what warlocks are. Is a villain with a time-stopping watch too OP? Bear in mind that if the player characters get hold of that watch, your campaign is fucked. So you make sure that there's a heavy price to pay for using that timestamp, that time-stopping watch, and there's an escape clause for that watch, so that if the bad guy gets killed, the watch teleports to some different location or something. Thanks, Demon Inquisition. Introduced a Kobold Dragon to my campaign. He asked the party to grab an item out of a temple. They had no idea who was just putting his traps through a test run. Ferris dragons need more love. That's great. That's a great idea. They return all scuffed and bleeding with arrows sticking out of them, and he just gets the item. He's like, thanks. Here's your money. Yeah, 123 people in here already. Like, I like the idea of lizard folk being a litmus test for, like, the alchemist has been releasing his potions, failed potions, into the drains, and the drains drain into the swamps, and the lizard folk get, like, swollen weird with alchemical power. I mean, why not? If you have an interesting and cool idea in D&D, put it into your campaign right away. That's what I say. That's my policy. Always go gonzo with your D&D. There's like the this is the thing that I was talking about earlier. The creator race has probably created a lot of individual creatures. Like in the quest to create Naga are immortal, so there must be a lot of test creatures that have immortality but don't have the aspects that they wanted with the Naga. So when the Saruk were creating the Naga in the first place, they may have created Yuan-Ti as an accidental side offshoot that became a race. But there's probably a whole heap of individual creatures which are just individuals that were results of experimentation, which are effectively immortal unless killed, but are not Naga or Liz or Yuan-Ti or other things. They're individual monsters. So you could have individual monsters pop up out of lizard folk populations and stuff. So you could have a half human, half lizard folk who isn't a race of creatures. It's just a one-off. So it's like Dave, the half lizard folk. How would a lich get a vampire lord to become his partner in crime? Probably through mutual interest, like they're both intelligent undead. If the lich can provide easy access to the victims of the vampire, so essentially accentuate the vampire's control and domination, or possibly the lich would be responsible for clearing out a region so that the vampire lord could create his lair there and ensconce himself in his misery. That would work. Also, the vampire could be some sort of a mad Victor Frankenstein creator, right? And the lich could be his Igor, essentially, his undead assistant. Bane lizard folk, and I like it. I like it. Oh, that's definitely a good way to do it, Mark R. Being a YouTube member is certainly really good for the channel. The story of Cass and Vecna. Exactly. Yeah, eventually the vampire's going to turn on that lich. You just know it. Teenage alchemical night tortoises. Yeah, doesn't really work. Teenage monk. Teenage alchemical monk turtles. Doesn't ring a... AJ, what are my thoughts on non-half-orc and half-elf species in your game? I really want to play a descendant of my dwarf paladin who married a human. Oh yeah, sure. Like there's got to be a lot of people in the D&D world who are just of mixed heritage, but it's not a thing. Like it doesn't make a huge difference to their stats and stuff. Because in the half dwarf in Dark Sun is the mole, but they've got the the heritage of being essentially a slave race, whereas in other games they wouldn't be necessarily. And yeah, you wouldn't have to follow that same theme. They could have they would be quite rare, so it wouldn't be a race per se. Again, you could just make an individual. That's why I think it's a good idea to. It was a good development to split the heritage and the culture as separate things. So your DNA doesn't necessarily have to match up with your cultural upbringing. So you could be a full human who was raised as a dwarf, raised in a dwarven society. Case in point is Cattybury, who's essentially spent most of her life living amongst dwarves as a dwarf, so to speak. So she's the adopted daughter of Bruno Battlehammer. Yeah, I like the emotionless aspect of the Huanti. So they're kind of like Romulans, right? They're the evil Vulcans. I am excited for Baldur's Gate 3, yes. At the moment, I have been playing No Man's Sky quite solidly. So I spend my time like flying around in a spaceship and reading arcane tomes of monster creation and making videos. Aslan and Strahd and Ravenloft. Well, I'm also doing Nine Hells in the Abyss, so fire away, Demon Inquisition. Any questions you have? You're playing a pureblood spirit bard right now. Ooh, nice. Dave, what a guy. Thought he was a mongrel folk. You tend to see a lot of that in Conan, right? Lizard cults and snake people. You recently made a homebrew deep spawn offshoot species. They have no eyes or mouth arms. What? They use their spawn to see and speak through, besides their sonic powers. Oh yeah, okay, yep. Teenage magic rogue turtles. Turtles. Teenage cyborg shadow dragons. I like it. Yeah, Jasper Carrot. Essentially from Discworld is that as well, a human raised as a dwarf, so he thinks like he thinks like a dwarf. Thanks, Urosh. No comments or questions? No. Yeah, I gotta admit I do read the books in Skyrim. You got a Bone Lord fight tonight. Any tips for running a great combat? Keep the undead hidden, like one of the flagstone idea that I had with the skeletons. So the characters are walking across the floor and it's like it moves a little bit, and then you look down and you notice that there's skeletal fingers around the edges of all the flagstones because the skeletons are all holding the floor up. So there's literally an army of skeletons underneath you, and you're walking across panels that they're holding up because they're commanded to, and at any moment the Bone Lord can just go like that and you drop through and get sliced and diced by the skeletal blenders in the floor beneath you. Not wights, there's another, I think it's spectres or something like that, have them trapped in objects, so you have something which is a source of a source of necromantic power, so it's constantly healing the undead inside there, but the wraith are actually trapped inside, so they're taking damage because they're inside a physical object, but they're getting regenerated by the negative energy inside it. So as soon as the object breaks, they release, screaming with rage and agony from hundreds of years of being trapped in there, and then kill anything around them. So the Bone Lord is just throwing wraith bombs. Hey, thanks Demon Inquisition. Great, I'm running Descent into Avernus starting next week. I'd like to inject Pazuzu into it, as I love Pazuzu. I'm just short on ideas on how to place Pazuzu in the campaign. I'd love a tip or two. So Pazuzu is right there on your shoulder when you need help. Pazuzu makes it known that no strings attached, he will help out anybody who asks for his help if they find themselves traversing through the abyss or the nine hells. So he's the king of the lower aerial kingdoms. So imps and any sort of low life excuse me, any low life flying fiends essentially have to answer to him. He's an Oberth, right? He's been around for a very long time. He's got his fingers in lots of different pies. He's a back avenue for promotion and power amongst the devils of the nine hells, even though he's a demon, so to speak. He's not really a demon, though. That's the thing. He's an individual that sort of has kept himself separate from the blood war and profited off it enormously. So he's there offering help and assistance. So he's almost like a demonic middleman. He'll show up in a feather suit and offer, advice and stuff. And then once the players become more and more able to rely on Pazuzu, then he starts to stipulate prices for things. And those will be towards turning those characters into more and more chaotic evil, so that they join his forces, so to speak. Apparently there was supposed to be a live-action Rifts movie made by Disney. I wonder what happened to that. Well, probably had something to do with Kevin Zembita not relinquishing any form of control over it whatsoever, because the guy's kind of in the way of Rifts a bit. I don't know. Ooh, my phone just went woo-woo. If a lizard folk was raised by humans, would it see them as kin? It would see them as its tribe, yeah, essentially. What is your favourite edition other than 5th edition info-wise? 3.5 edition. 2nd edition obviously was the establishment of a lot of lore, and that we started to see dragons become diversified into the types of dragons that they are now, instead of each dragon being unique. And 3.5 edition really solidified the lore of D&D much more. When's the next dragon video? Will be this week. That'll be the red dragon. Tressum video, I'm probably not going to do a video on just flying cats, because they're not that interesting. They're cats with wings. Thank you. Good morning, Darkstrider. Hey, Black Barnes. God, get Chester. Oh yeah, I forget that somebody's sneeze ringing is triggering to people in the other parts of the world. Things are very great over here in New Zealand. We've got no COVID. Somebody made a jibe at the. There's more cases of COVID in the White House than there are in New Zealand at the moment. We had a good laugh about that, I have to say. Hey, thanks, Ugoros. We were in Lehman's hut and the GM piled 30 zombies on top for when the hut dropped. Fireball at 7th level cleared the map. Epic. Bits of zombie body all everywhere. Disney does suck hard, that's true. Apart from their Star Wars stuff, which they're putting out, which is great. Yeah, that's exactly right. You break open the Wraith Bomb and you say, "You're free," and then it attacks you. Yeah, that's exactly what happens. Well, that's a fine, you're welcome. Hey, you're most welcome, Demon Inquisition. Why do the lizard folk hate Sahuagin and Bullywugs? Because they get victimized by them so much. It's just like their idiot neighbors. It's like, the Bullywugs are always playing the music too loud. they're hunting out their area. Essentially, they don't like competition because they like to, they're crocodiles who like the least amount of effort for their food, sort of thing. And competition amongst Sahuagin and Bullywugs, they and also Sahuagin are vicious. They'll eat each other. Also, Bullywugs are not. They came along after the lizard folk. The lizard folk were they were generated or created much earlier than the Bullywugs. The Bullywugs were created by the Petrarchi, the amphibians. Hey, Kikastuk. Online D&D, I have to ask the sage, how do you handle maps? Prepping them is one thing, but what's your trick for making them on the fly? Maps are hard. I just use Microsoft Paint, man. I just share screen with Microsoft Paint. I don't even use Roll20. I just use Zoom or something like that. Some sort of screen, camera, video chat conferencing thing, and I just share screen for maps and things and change them on the fly. I do it very, very quickly. Or I'll just have a physical map that I point the camera at, or something like that. Very low tech. Anything, whatever's easiest, really. What do I think of the 5e scum? I haven't actually looked at them lately. Yeah, they're okay. No, I don't have a video on the Principles of Elemental Evil yet, Naught. Naught seeing eye. I would like to, though. They're an interesting story because they were duped into believing they had power. They were given personality, so to speak. Even if you do live in New Zealand, you'll never meet me because I don't go anywhere. I'm ensconced in my tower of weirdness. Honestly, I don't get out much at all. I like it that way. Star Wars stuff, great. Can you clarify that, AJ? Mandalorian, man. I happen to like Solo. I happen to like Rogue One. I thought they were great. I'm the sort of fan who just appreciates new content. Like I don't. I'm not overly picky about my Star Wars and Star Trek. I just like more stuff. So it's like the new Star Trek Discovery. It's like, great, bring it on. In many anime, lizard folk tend to love cheese because it's different. Your opinion? Yeah, they would love cheese for sure. It's fatty and nutritious, and it's something they don't necessarily make themselves. So they would be like, this is interesting. This is human food that I can get behind. It's kind of decayed. It hits my taste buds. I like it. Lizard folk do eat each other if it's convenient, and also they've probably got some tribal traditions where they eat the dead in some cases. But for most amphibians, I think they tend to they avoid the smell of their own dead. Sharks too. That's how shark repellent works. It's essentially the smell of dead sharks repels them. Mandalorian isn't just great, it's cool. They brought cool back to Star Wars. That was what was missing in a lot of Star Wars stuff. Star Wars is cool, man. That's the whole idea. It's like, I want to be a space bikie. Lobo, the character Lobo, is one of my favourite Marvel characters. He's a space bikie. I love him. No shame, I haven't seen sunlight in decades. Yeah, that's just the way I roll, man. I literally just create and drink coffee and sleep, and I don't need a lot of socializing. This is the socializing that I'm doing right now. People are stressful. AJ might be a lizard folk using a true polymorph. How did we get to talk about lizard folk so much? Yeah, that's one thing. Like, I'm not too concerned about like people showing up at my doorstep. You know, it just never happens. Nobody in New Zealand knows who I am or what I do. If I was going to like Gen Con or something like that, then it would be certainly more interesting. But Gen Con got cancelled just before I went there, so I didn't get to experience that. I hope we have a Gen Con in the future that I get to go to. You're not up to date on the Star Wars spin-offs? Well, you've got some catching up to do. Lobo's a DC character. Yep, you're right, Robert Wilson. I'm sorry. I got that wrong. I thought there was something wrong as soon as it left my mouth, but I moved on to different things. Bikey, yeah. Motorbike rider. Space bike rider. What's my favourite type of lizard folk? Probably the little dudes with the yellow fins that spit darts. They're pretty interesting. You'll try show up and try and sell me life insurance. Yeah. The Star Wars animated series, I think, were a really unexpected treasure. Like they just went really well. Like the Clone Wars and Rebels and stuff like that were really good for fleshing out the whole thing. I remember there was a Droids series as well that talked about the journey of C-3PO and R2-D2 as well. I think that was how it sort of started. But yeah, I really like those animated stories. Even the animation style was pretty cool. I'm not one of those people that collects like toy figurines and chibi plushies and stuff like that of creatures, but I really like those characters. Is a bikey like a cowboy? It's a motorbike rider, you know? Bikey. Or am I pronouncing it weird? Is that why you guys are making me say it over and over again? Biker? A biker. '84, '85 time frame for droids? Sounds about right. They saved prequels, yeah. Do you like 40k Necromunda? Yep. I love everything Warhammer 40k. I would like to see a reunification of Dungeons and Dragons with Games Workshop. Could you imagine if Hasbro bought out Games Workshop and we actually started getting like 5th edition Warhammer campaign? Whoa. Hey, Frederick. So is AJ saying he's bike curious? I've been a motorbike rider, for sure. Just a scooter, but still, it's a motorbike. It's a powered bicycle. Clone Wars is good. According to the 4th edition Demonomicon, Pazuzu was responsible for corruption of Asmodeus. Lies. Lies. 4th edition is full of misinformation. Oh, well, that's a miniature. That's not a figurine. The Green Dragon is... He's not a toy. Okay, it's a toy. Any suggestions on solo runs between couples, AJ? Not really. I run them pretty much the same way I'd run a normal sort of campaign. Give them a group of characters that they can run. It doesn't just have to be one person running one character. Let them actually run a group of characters. It's quite possible. My poor thief got polymorphed into a corrupted, cursed black unicorn. Interesting. Hasbro is bad and evil. Well, Hasbro is what it is. There's nothing we can do about it. You sounded very American. Yeah, I was trying to sound American when I said biker. 4th edition never happened, yeah. I played 4th edition and enjoyed it. Because I'm a loyalist. Kiwi on a scooter equals bike, yeah. Any advice on role-playing a goblin? Goblins are survivors, man. Like, they're stronger than you think. Also, their sense of tastes are reversed, so like they like disgusting things, revel in it, and they're conniving, and they always go down the path of being a rat bastard, you know. Are clerics really just self-important warlocks? What's the difference between the two? Yeah, essentially they have an entire organization behind them. So warlocks are independent, right? So they're not answering to anybody but their patron, so to speak. So they're a cultist sort of thing. They could really easily lead a cult faction, like just instantaneously. So that's why warlocks are sort of seen as suspicious. Like as soon as they start getting a following and people start going missing, everybody's going to suspect the warlock. Whereas clerics, on the other hand, are legitimate. I'm a legitimate businessman. You know, here's what authority do I have? Well, me and my army of paladins and, you know, militants and fanatical worshippers and stuff, and just everybody being religious in the town and stuff. Plus, you know, clerics heal people. Warlocks generally don't. Hey, Miss Eccentric. Jonathan Harris, thank you. Asmodeus created 4th edition. Story checks out. Hey, Jimmy. Places Greed Dragon into the map. Told you he's miniature. Yeah, exactly. He is a miniature. He's what we call a bigature. In Facebook, someone asked, what's your favourite game outside of D? And my response was, going to bars in Mexico. Hasbro is probably one of the better big game companies, really. Yeah, don't forget, Hasbro is it's an organisation made up of individuals who are responsible for providing profits to shareholders, essentially. So it's a nebulous organization with control of a lot of money that is just responsible for putting out products. We, as consumers who spend money on those products, are the guiding force of Hasbro. So if we stop buying things for any reason, Hasbro will cease production or any interest in that line of stuff and then go on to something else. So if Dungeons and Dragons dies in the water, it's entirely our fault for not buying products. So my advice to you is always keep buying D&D products, because even if it's a shitty product, the interest of the people who are spending money on it will be listened to by Hasbro. So the more products you buy, the stronger your voice will be in Hasbro. The shareholders will direct them to keep investing in a line of stuff that keeps selling. They're a company. They're not a religious order. They're not interested in the spirit of Dungeons and Dragons. They're interested in the monetary aspect of Dungeons and Dragons. It's a stark reality. So in order to keep D&D alive and going in the direction that we want it to, we need to keep supporting the products that we want the company to keep producing. This is probably why we're not going to see a lot of Dungeons and Dragons cookbooks. Because I bet you that's not selling well. Sorry, Robert, what was your super chat? I'll zip back up. Do you have any favourite monsters from the Kobold Press books? Tome of Beasts and Creature Codex. Yeah, I do. I've already talked about one, I think. but there's a lot more that I need to cover as well, particularly the Fey Lords and stuff like that in there. And also they've got a pretty good take on a couple of dragons as well, and the drakes are really good. Like I might talk about the Tavern Drake, for instance, just because they're awesome. You spend way too much on D&D products. Yeah, you and me both. That's the weird thing about our hobby, is it is a monopoly, and it's always been a monopoly, and we get concerned when it's not a monopoly. Isn't that weird? Like Pathfinder is a competition to D&D, and so there's this like animosity between Pathfinder and D&D when really there shouldn't be. And Paizo was responsible for publishing Dragon Magazine for so long. Isn't it weird? Survive This fantasy game. No, I haven't heard about that one. One that I am backing at the moment. So there's also Esper's Esoterica book on Kickstarter at the moment, which is looking really good. That's way past its funding goal at the moment, and is right into the few of its stretch goals, which is including new feats and things like that. So definitely support Esper the Bard. You would have seen my video on that already. But there's a sci-fi type one, which is like a modern dark take on like a Spelljammery type thing, which I'm really looking forward to, which is currently in Kickstarter at the moment. That's what's it called? Dark Space or something like that. I think it's Dark Space. So yeah, that one I've got a really good feeling. I've got a good vibe about it. It's a fallacy to think that buyers decide what to buy. Our desire doesn't belong to us, it belongs to Slaanesh. Yeah. AJ is a CAO. No. You don't want to tempt me with that much power. Power corrupts, man. Power corrupts, absolutely. What would my version of D&D be like? It wouldn't be everybody's version of D&D, that's for sure. First of all, my D&D games are complete slapstick. Like, I put a lot of comedy into my games. I have visited the City of Brass in my campaigns, yes. I haven't run a campaign based on the City of Brass. It's always just been a location that we go to and try and get out of as quickly as possible in the game. Would Santa Claus serve the Seelie or Unseelie courts? Neither. He's his own court, essentially. He's a Fey Lord with his own merit. Freakonomics Radio interviewed an expert on game theory, curious what the fellow thinks of D&D. I'd be interested in that too. Competition brings improvement, yes, true. Remember, Dungeons & Dragons, as a corporate product, is not that huge, really. I mean, it's got a population of something like 5 million diehard fans of Dungeons & Dragons. Probably closer to 10 million at the moment. But compared to the world's population, that's just a thimble full of people. We are recognised now more in a mainstream sort of way, and most people now know what Dungeons & Dragons is. But, yeah. For most of my career in Dungeons & Dragons, most of the people that I talk to have no idea what Dungeons & Dragons is until I describe it to them. Now, they know. They're like, oh, that Stranger Things show. I remember. Those kids playing that game. And let's not forget, Dungeons & Dragons also featured in the movie E.T. Elliot's older brother was playing Dungeons & Dragons with his friends in the background. Do you remember? Hey, Jimmy. Thanks. In my world, Santa is a Fey Lord, and his red coat is literally woven from children's dreams. Thoughts? I think that's great. I think that's a fantastic idea. Is his mistress the Tooth Fairy? Imagine the Tooth Fairy scouting out locations. Scouting out locations. Oh, did I listen to? Sorry. I imagine warlocks as being independent contractors. Sure, a cleric works for the company, but a warlock is hired for a job. Yeah. What would be really interesting is getting a party of warlocks together. Like some patron actively recruits just warlocks. How interesting would that be? Like, what would their patrons think, you know, if they've got these rival agents all working together? Does it force those patrons to interact in ways that they probably should not? Could that be part of a plot, right? Could a patron pay warlocks to gather together in an effort to sway the patrons of those warlocks? Like a meta plot where he's trying to actually hook into their power source and subvert it away from the warlocks for his own dire evil purposes. Or even good purposes. Thanks, Demon Inquisition. One last thing, AJ. What's the Nine Hells answer to Mollydeus? That seems like a trump card they don't have. Well, as I said, there's a lot of individuals in the Nine Hells that don't conform to the normal types. So the Archdevils of Hell are individuals that have specific purposes and things. So you could see that Mollydeus are kind of like archdemons, right? So Archdevils are really the answer to Mollydeus. How do we get into one of the games that you DM? I'm not currently GMing any games. I haven't for months and months and months and months. So, yeah, it's really, you need to be one of my friends, essentially. I'm not entirely fussy about who I game with. It's just whoever's around, really. Yeah, her palace made out of teeth. Terry Pratchett's idea of like the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus, or Hog's father, and the Tooth Fairy is great. Like the Tooth Fairy is always sinister, super sinister. Like, what are you collecting children's discarded body parts for? Hey, Adriana, thanks. I loved watching your DM style in the freelancers campaign. Would love to watch you run another game. Yeah, it'll eventually, one day. Getting multiple warlocks together sounds like Mortal Kombat. Yeah. Would a Slard Lord's warlock let you do whatever? Probably. Like chaotic. Slard Lords, though, they're on a career path towards just terrible, terrible things. Like, the more powerful a Slard gets, the more evil it is. It's like, what do they know about the multiverse? Right? They go away for a long period of time. They eat a lot of entropic stuff to become these super powerful Slard Lords. And, yeah, they recognize that the universe of D&D is broken. Would Ur Priests kind of be like warlocks? They... I think they might be more inclined. Like, you could go down the Ur Priest or the warlock path. The similar sort of mindset, for sure. Ur Priests are an extreme version of one particular point of view. Warlocks are a method of getting power through another means. So Ur Priests would kind of be opposed to even that. Like, I'm not going to be beholden to anyone. Not gods, not powers, nothing. I was curious about how one goes about writing a D&D novel. For instance, can I call the Underdark, or just infer what the location is? Thanks. Yeah, no. I would definitely consult with the Wizard of the Coast. Well, the Wizard of the Coast makes it all pretty clear. If you delve through their website and stuff and look at their policies and things, and their open game license and things like that, you will understand that there are keywords and things like that you can't use. So yeah, my suggestion would be to just create your own thing, man. Derive it from the general fantasy thing, and don't use specific terms that you get from your D&D games. Hey, DJ Ghostman. Hey, Greenscythe. You guys are all way late because we're about to finish the stream. Do I think a good Slard Lord is possible? Yeah, sure. Just because we haven't seen one so far doesn't mean they don't exist. Non-involvement may be the best thing that they can do. Have a run across the Borg like, no. The Deep Down, yeah. The Underworld. Is Exodad Chittle copyright by Wizard of the Coast? No, I don't think so. Do deities have both clerics and warlocks? Like, does Palor have devoted clerics and then also a couple randos with pacts? You could say Sun Souls, sorcerers, kind of like that, right? You were late because you were siphoning your mango cider. That's a good enough excuse. I've actually got to process some cider as well, some mead. I've got a brew that's just finished. I've got to put it into its... got to mix some honey with it, stabilise it, and then bottle it. What would a good Slard Lord do? Nothing, really. They would just enjoy the chaos of the limbo. They'd not get involved with other creatures. They would let other creatures do their thing. So goodness is sometimes support, but it's also non-involvement. If you're not compatible with the Prime Material universe, then you just stay away from it. So you could encounter a good Slard if you go to the chaos of limbo. They recognise that you're not native to that region, and then they support you by creating an environment which is stable for you, and say, "What are you doing here?" And then provide you with a means of transporting out of there. So that's what a good creature from limbo would do, or the elemental chaos or whatever. Yeah, Subscribestar, man. If you wanna support me, back me up on Subscribestar. That's the latest. That's the new thing. I'm trying to get Subscribestar going so that I can. But there's been a surge of support on Patreon lately. It seems like as soon as Subscribestar came along, all the Patreon people were like, "Oh yeah, that's right. I was going to subscribe to Patreon," and then there was a surge of subscribers. I was just like, "But why? Patreon is evil." But it's whatever people want to do. So yeah. Thanks, amigo. Thanks, Robert. Supposedly there's going to be a new D&D movie that will hopefully have something more memorable than an overacting Jeremy Irons. Well, don't forget there's another couple of movies that came after that as well. And aside from the ridiculous player character group with the was it an assassin who killed himself by licking his own poison, something like that. That was actually alright-ish. Yeah. I remember the death of the druid or cleric from the first movie when he got blasted by the dragon, for instance. That was fantastic. It was just like, yeah, that's the most meaningless character death ever. It's like, why did they even go and find this guy? Hopefully they do something good with it. Thanks, amigo. Not just a question, just I'm taking a moment to appreciate how Modern Canon's Tome of Foes has almost all of their archetypals but doesn't list Mephistopheles. Instead it just lists his first lieutenant. Really? Interesting. I didn't realise that. Huh. Curious. I suppose you're not supposed to fight Mephistopheles. He's the backup for Asmodeus, right? Or maybe he is Asmodeus. Alright. I'm off to work. Black Dragon coming up soon. Another podcasty thing coming soon. See if I can squeeze another video in this week as well. Who knows? Never know. And I'll bid you all adieu.